Kennedy didn't expect her father, Miles, to chase her all the way from Zibo, Shandong to Hefei, Anhui, just to force her to break up with Chase. This man is no longer young, with a small belly and some wrinkles. He stood downstairs at Kennedy's company with a stern face and said, "Resign now, or I'll go up and talk to your boss." Kennedy stood in front of him and said, "You're how old now? Can you please stop being so childish? You're the childish one. I'm telling you, if you don't go back this time, I'll stay here and not leave." Kennedy had no choice but to ask for leave from her supervisor and take Miles to a hotel. She walked ahead in frustration, with Miles following behind. It was the summer of 2014. Kennedy graduated from the University of Science and Technology of China and planned to stay in Hefei with her boyfriend, Chase. When Miles heard that Kennedy wouldn't return to Zibo, he directly exploded on the phone, "I've already used my connections to arrange a job for you. Why are you floating around in Hefei on your own?" Kennedy replied, "I'm not floating, Dad. I have Chase. I don't care about this Chase. Anyway, you must come back to me." Kennedy hung up the phone directly. Then, Miles took a train from Zibo to Hefei in a hurry, determined to take Kennedy back home. He didn't even give Chase a chance to meet. Kennedy and Chase were college classmates, in love for 3 years, and she believed he was the right one for her. Chase's family was in Hefei, and Kennedy was the only daughter at home. Miles just wanted her to stay in Zibo. Not to mention Hefei, he was unwilling to let her go to any other city in Shandong. So, this was destined to be a war. Chase said, "If it's not working here, I'll go to Zibo with you. I'm a grown man, I can adapt anywhere." Kennedy knew this was Chase's sincere statement. She understood him and knew that she couldn't let go of this man. Thus, she despised Miles even more for his authoritarianism. From childhood to adulthood, he always wanted her to obey him in everything. Going to Hefei for college was Kennedy's first rebellion. Marrying afar was probably the biggest rebellion in her life. In reality, planning to stay in Hefei wasn't just because of Chase but also because her career prospects were better there than in Zibo. But Miles was stubborn. Once he decided on something, nothing could change his mind. Mother Lydia tried to advise Kennedy over the phone, "Your dad is just worried you might suffer outside. Don't challenge him, come back." Kennedy replied, "Mom, it's the modern era. Do you and Dad still have to play the good cop, bad cop routine? If I give up Chase, I'll regret it." Lydia said, "Your dad is doing it for your own good. If this Chase is really that good, let him prove himself." Kennedy sighed, "At least give him a chance to prove himself." Miles stayed in a hotel, and when Chase came to see him, Miles directly kept him outside, saying, "Who are you? We have nothing to talk about. Leave quickly." He went 5 times, but not a word was exchanged on any occasion. Kennedy thought Miles would leave after a day or 2, but she didn't expect him to be so stubborn. If she didn't go back with him, he wouldn't leave. Unable to resist, Kennedy had to pretend to break up with Chase and escort her father back to Zibo. However, Kennedy's stubbornness surfaced. After returning to Zibo, she outwardly obeyed Miles but secretly planned to sneak away with the household registration book, preparing to quietly get the marriage certificate at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Turning the tables and making it a done deal, let's see how he opposes that. Chase disagreed, finding it too unfair to Kennedy. But Kennedy said, "I know my dad. He wishes he could tie me to him. If you truly love me, follow my plan, and no resistance is allowed." On August 10, 2014, Kennedy sneaked the household registration book, went to Hefei with Chase, and got the marriage certificate. Then, with Chase in tow, she returned to Zibo and told Miles, "Dad, this might be the biggest rebellion of my life, but please trust me, this man will make me happy." Chase knelt down and said, "Dad, Mom, I will treat Kennedy well for the rest of my life." After staring blankly for a while, Miles slapped Kennedy. Both Kennedy and her mother were dumbfounded. From childhood to adulthood, Miles had never laid a hand on Kennedy. Even when she didn't listen to him and went to Hefei for college, he only sulked for a few days. But this time, she truly disappointed him, didn't she? In Miles' memories, his mother, who had migrated from the south to Zibo, was not happy. So, he didn't want such unhappiness to happen to his daughter. Kennedy said, "Dad, transportation is advanced now. Besides, I'm sure I won't find anyone more suitable for me than Chase. Missing him would be the biggest regret of my life." Kennedy spoke with such determination. That look moved Chase and finally convinced her father not to stop her from returning to Hefei. On the day Kennedy got married, many relatives came to the house. Miles got drunk, sitting in the living room, wailing loudly. As he cried, he said, "My daughter, who I've cherished since childhood, is marrying so far away. Who will she turn to if she faces any grievances in the future?" It was the first time Kennedy saw Miles cry like that. Suddenly, she felt a bit guilty. She had been busy arguing with him, but she hadn't shown enough patience and sincerity to convince him that she would be happy. Consequently, he had 100 worries about her marrying so far away. Chase, standing beside them, also had red eyes. He said, "Dad, please trust me." Miles ignored him. In his eyes, Chase had taken away his precious daughter, making him a rival. He didn't want to show him any kindness. When Kennedy and Chase returned to Zibo after the wedding, they brought many things with them. However, upon arriving home, Miles found an excuse to slip away, leaving Lydia alone at home. Lydia said, "Your dad just can't bear to see you marry far away. He'll get used to it after a while." But in reality, since the day Kennedy married and moved away, it seemed like a layer of ice had formed in her relationship with Miles. She couldn't melt that ice, so she chose to give up. In their first year of marriage, Kennedy stayed in Hefei for the Chinese New Year. On the 30th day of the month, she called home, but Miles refused to answer the phone. Although everything around her was lively, with Chase, her in-laws, and all the relatives and friends treating her well, the thought of her parents celebrating the New Year alone in Zibo made her inexplicably sad. That year, the snow fell particularly heavily. Kennedy went downstairs and made a snowman, just like she used to do as a child. After making it, she took a photo and sent it to the family group. Then, unable to resist, she said, "Dad, Mom, I miss you so much." Miles immediately called back and scolded her, "I told you not to go so far. Why don't you listen to me? Stop thinking about home. Come back soon after the New Year." After saying that, he hung up the phone with a snap. Later, Lydia said that after hanging up, Miles cried like a fool. In Kennedy's memory, Miles rarely shed tears. But since she married and moved away, he had turned into a bit of a crybaby. In 2016, Kennedy became pregnant, but the early stages of the pregnancy were not smooth, and the doctor mentioned signs of a possible miscarriage. Worried, Kennedy, like any woman in distress, thought of no one but her husband and her mother. She called Lydia, crying, "What should I do? I'm bleeding. Will anything happen?" That very night, Lydia appeared in Hefei, with Miles following behind, his face dark with concern. Miles stayed in Hefei for a month. During that time, he found various ways to cook delicious meals for Kennedy. Sometimes, watching Kennedy enjoy the food, Miles couldn't help but lower his voice and say, "If you didn't marry so far away, Dad would cook for you like this every day." Hearing these words, Kennedy held back her tears, letting them fall into her bowl. With the arrival of the baby, she seemed particularly fragile. After a month, Miles returned to Zibo, leaving Lydia in Hefei to take care of Kennedy. On the day he left, Chase accompanied him. On the way, Chase said, "Dad, thank you. Thank you for giving Kennedy to me." Miles turned away without saying a word. However, probably since Kennedy became pregnant, Miles gradually accepted Chase and also accepted his daughter's distant marriage. One day during a meal, Lydia suddenly asked Chase, "What's the approximate price of houses around here?" Kennedy chuckled and said, "Mom, why are you suddenly interested in housing prices?" Lydia replied, "Oh, nothing, just curious." In reality, at that time, Miles was planning to buy a house in Hefei. It didn't have to be large, it just needed to be closer to Kennedy. When Kennedy learned about this, Miles had already sold the house he had lived in with Lydia for nearly 30 years. He was ready to uproot and settle in the city where Kennedy lived. Kennedy was a bit angry. She yelled at Miles over the phone, "For such a big thing, couldn't you discuss it with me? Selling the house just like that. What if you get cheated? Besides, if you want to come to Hefei, you can move in with us. Why sell the house over there?" Miles remained silent for a while before saying slowly, "I understand what you're saying, but no matter what, that has always been your and Chase's home. I want you to have a home in Hefei, in addition to your in-laws, so that you can come back anytime, anywhere." Listening to this, tears streamed down Kennedy's face. In the past, when she heard stories like the tale of Meng's mother moving 3 times, she found it incredible. Now, experiencing such a situation firsthand, Kennedy truly understood the depth of a parent's love and the desire to provide the best love and companionship for their child. When the granddaughter was born, Miles already had the keys to the house in Huffay. It was less than a 10-minute walk from Kennedy and Chase's home to Miles and Lydia's home. In this way, Miles ensured that Kennedy had a home in Huffay, the kind of home where, no matter how much trouble you faced outside, returning to it meant someone would stand by you through thick and thin. However, both Miles and Lydia had to adapt to a new city at the age of 55. They were no longer surrounded by familiar relatives and friends, and the familiar market wasn't just around the corner anymore. Lydia said, "It's okay, as long as you are happy, your dad and I are fine anywhere." In fact, selling the house and coming to Huffay was planned by your dad from the day you got your marriage certificate. Now, we are reunited as a family. Feeling a sudden warmth, Kennedy wanted to hug Miles and Lydia. In her childhood, they were the ones she clung to. However, as she grew up, it became a matter of wherever she was, they were there too. The city she lived in became their home. Fortunately, in the years since marrying Chase, he hadn't disappointed her or Miles. He treated Kennedy well, took care of their child, and also treated Miles and Lydia kindly. When Lydia fell ill and was hospitalized, Chase tirelessly accompanied her. When the doctor asked what material to use, he didn't hesitate to choose the best. People in the hospital room commented that even a biological son might not be as good. Whenever he had time, Chase would play mahjong with his father-in-law, intentionally letting him win money. Then, on the way home, he would playfully ask Kennedy to reimburse him. In these thoughtful details, Kennedy was sure that she had won the bet she made. As someone who had married far away, she felt truly happy. As for the future, she hoped to continue being happy. The initial and genuine agreement between Kennedy and Chase was to strive for happiness, reassuring their parents.